In the early days of helicopter experimentation and development, controllability was a big hurdle due to the unequal lift across the rotor disc, as the helicopter is moving forward or with a strong wind. Juan de la Cierva, a pioneer of the autogiro or gyroplane, simply put hinges on the rotor blades that would allow each blade to move or flap up or down independently of each other. This in turn would change the angle of attack of each blade, therefore naturally equalizing lift across the rotor disc. Providing women access to birth control and options, hormonal EID barrier, has shown to be an incredibly powerful tool to reduce poverty, hunger, low education levels, public health issues, etc. In lower-income nations, well everywhere, but specifically research on strategies in this context showed it to be one of the cheapest, easiest ways to improve a host of challenging issues. Control over one's reproduction is important individually, of course, but societally it is an incredibly powerful lever, with much higher ROI than direct aid, and the ability to reduce the need for direct aid. The problem was fruit doesn't last on long journeys. I believe it was the Dutch who started using garlic since it lasted longer. So they'd still get scurvy eventually, which is why they became so prevalent in the age of sail. Making a blue lead. There is a whole documentary on it. It's worth watching if you're into science. It wasn't a simple process. Took years of work and a lot of money. The company then shafted him. It did get the guy his PhD and a Nobel Prize though. Told her, it wasn't a simple process. Took years of work and a lot of money. The company then shafted him. It did get the guy his PhD and a Nobel Prize though. Wasn't there a situation where American astronauts' pens weren't working well in space? To avoid this problem, the Russians used pencils. Could be remembering wrong. Mandela effect. That story isn't actually true, as weightless graphite from pencils can sorely screw with electronics and ventilation systems. Mandela effect. That story isn't actually true, as weightless graphite from pencils can sorely screw with electronics and ventilation systems. Atlanta International Airport needed people to arrive at certain places at certain times instead of all at once to avoid lines and crowding. So they used carpet to slow people down at strategic locations. Everyone walks slowly on carpet, and they controlled their walk speed where needed. Did a major consulting job for a large airline on how to improve punctuality for arrivals of domestic flights. It was a massive project, and we came up with a lot of minor improvements, but the biggest impact was made by simply giving flight times that were 10 minutes longer to the customers. So a flight London-Frankfurt would now be 1:35 hours in the published schedule instead of 1:25 hours. Passengers were raving about the improvement, and I still chuckle whenever I hear a pilot of said airline announce that they will even land 5 minutes before the scheduled time. Aircraft checklists. Before a 1935 crash of a -17 prototype, pilots just trained on how to do the necessary steps of starting, taking off, cruising, etc., etc. A very experienced test pilot forgot to take off the gust locks before takeoff, a control restrictor so that things don't move around in the wind while sitting on the ground. After the crash, engineers developed the first checklist for each stage of flight, so that each little big item would be sure to be attended to, and so you didn't have to depend on your memory. There was a truck that got wedged under a low bridge. Workers tried 4 hours to remove it unsuccessfully, for fear of damaging the bridge further if they just towed it out by force. Until that is, a 10-year-old girl watching from the side said, "Why don't they deflate the tires?" Survivorship bias is fascinating. In World War II, the Navy were trying to figure out how to prevent so many of their planes being shot down. They studied the damaged planes that came back and decided to reinforce the armor on the plane where they had received a lot of damage from gunfire. The numbers of planes returning didn't change until they thought about it logically and realized they had to add armor to where there was no damage. The planes that returned didn't need many changes made. They had returned after all and were the wrong planes to study. HTTP Wikipedia or Wikizurvavorship BS. Some women died after giving birth. It was the result of a bacterial infection. Doctors were seen as gentlemen and were insulted if told to wash their hands. The same doctors went from performing an autopsy to delivering a baby, never washing their hands. When his theory was tested, the death rate dropped significantly, 160 drop. The doctor who came up with the idea was ridiculed, institutionalized, beaten, and died of gangrene. Woman in there, newborns dying from infection after childbirth. Solution: doctors washing hands before and after meeting a patient. Forgot the name of the doctor that thought of it, but I remember he was stripped of all his titles and sent to an asylum for trying to push doctors to implement this into their practice. Ignat Semmelweis. Rehydration solutions, outbreaks of cholera and dysentery used to kill so many children, even after hospital care became widely available. The London hospital outbreaks in the early 1900s are a great example of this. Simple sugar and salt water solutions would have saved most of them, but we didn't understand. Now dying of dehydration is almost unheard of in the developed world if medical care is available. Obviously, it happens as a secondary side effect to some other really serious illnesses, but people don't die of stomach bugs anymore unless they are for some reason unable to access basic medical care. My daughter didn't want to take medicine when she was sick because a side effect was that it made her sleepy. The solution was to refuse to give it to her because it made her sleepy. Literally. I said, I'm supposed to give this to you to make you feel better. I can't though. It's going to make you sleepy, so you can't have it. You're already tired enough from being sick, I can't make you more tired. After a few minutes, she wanted it. I know it's not the same as what people want, but sometimes you've got to lean hard into the negatives when you're dealing with contrary people, lol. I'm not sure a lot of the posts here actually relate to the original question. What problem was solved by an easy answer? I would say the problem of salmonella and E. coli from milk. Solved by heating it. Pasteurization. Using base 2 arithmetic in computers. The early models tried to use base 10 and it was ugly. Then they discovered that it was quite simple to represent a 1 or a 0 based on voltage level. Problem solved. 2's complement arithmetic was also a magnificent solution to representing negative numbers in a register. When you add two numbers together using simple binary arithmetic, you get the correct answer, regardless of the signs. It was the wheel of computing. Stomach ulcers being from Helicobacter pylori bacteria. Researcher gave himself the bacteria, got a stomach ulcer, complete change in treatment. Simple. Also awarded Nobel in 2005, Australian scientists Barry Marshall and Robin Warren discovered Helicobacter pylori H. Pylori, bacteria's role in causing stomach ulcers and gastritis, a groundbreaking finding that challenged the then accepted stress theory, earning them the 2005 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for revolutionizing ulcer treatment with antibiotics. Marshall famously proved the bacterium's pathogenicity by infecting himself, leading to the cure for ulcers and a better understanding of stomach cancer. The Hubble Space Telescope was launched with fault mirrors that collected light incorrectly. The team at NASA discussed a lot of potential options would fix the issue but weren't feasible to do. They ended up removing the least used piece of equipment to install the equivalent of eyeglasses. This gave us some of the most amazing pictures of space that anyone has seen. Soviet anti-tank rifles versus German tank sides. When invading the Soviet Union in World War II, the Germans came across a big issue. Soviet anti-tank rifles were able to penetrate their Panther's side armor with relative ease at close range. Germans went on to try and develop a new tank called Panther II, which would increase side and front armor substantially. In the end, it turns out, all the Germans had to do was put thin sheets of 5mm thick metal on the side of their tanks that solved the issue and removed most purpose for the Panther II project. Heard a story in school about a new high-rise building with slow elevators. Retrofitting faster elevators was cost prohibitive, but the tenants were up in arms about the wait times. Instead of expensive mechanical upgrades, managers installed mirrors in lobbies, which distracted people with their reflections, made waits seem shorter, and reduced complaints by addressing the perception of time. Humans' narcissism was apparently more powerful than our love of complaining.